Before last night, the Celtics had won 27 straight games on their home floor, including a record of 20-0 this season. When it's played in the Garden, these guys simply don't lose. But this most recent one wasn't just some ordinary home game. They were hosting the defending champion Nuggets for one of their two matchups of the year. Many would consider this to be a preview for the upcoming 2024 NBA Finals, and let's just say that the hype didn't disappoint one bit. The game started with a battle of the big men. On one hand, you have Porzingis, who the Celtics run their opening play for, a cross screen to get him the ball in the middle, and once he's got that position, there's not much you can do. And then on the other side, you of course have Jokic, who the Nuggets run virtually the exact same action for, except he seeks out contact. So when Kristaps dodges it, he loses his footing and turns it over. The Celtics respond by quickly running the ball up the court, which leads to a quality three for Kristaps in early offense. He was on fire from outside. This time it's a pick and pop, and Jokic plays it in a drop coverage while calling for Porter to switch. Porter doesn't switch though, instead staying attached to the ball, which leaves the big man with room on the wing to comfortably catch and shoot. And they go right back to the pick and pop on the next possession. Tatum draws two, which means Porzingis is open on the wing, and he knocks down his fourth shot in 4 attempts, scoring Boston's first 11 points. He's so unique in that he can play so many different positions on offense. You can curl him off of screens like a wing, and his jumper is so impossible to contest that the only way Jamal gets a hand up is by fouling him. Or he can play that two-man game I just talked about, where he isn't just a threat to pop, but also to roll. Again, Tatum draws two, and Gordon's forced to rotate down from the weak side, which leaves Brown with some room on a corner three, although he doesn't capitalize. And in the event that the high pick and roll doesn't materialize into any immediate advantage, then Kristaps can just use all of that space to post up in the middle, drawing another foul with that sky-high release point. In addition to the off-ball game, he can also initiate from up top, like how most modern-day offenses like to utilize their bigs, with the spacing and passing ability to generate some good interior offense for the guys around him. Though, I should mention they're facing Aaron Gordon. As for Jokic on the other end, he was absolutely terrorizing Porzingis in the low post. He slowly works his way to the middle with a few dribbles before turning back over his left shoulder for a little one-legged push shot. Then on the next play, he once again attacks the middle. Definitely should have been called for a carry, but the refs miss it, and as soon as Porzingis plays the right shoulder, he absolutely shreds him with a spin over his left. The Celtics were mostly playing him in single coverage, a strategy most commonly known as make Jokic a scorer, and he responded by torching them. Even with a packed paint, there's just no way to stop this fall-away jumper. When Horford checked in, they made him the primary matchup for Joker, with Kristaps roaming in the dunker spot. That didn't make much of a difference. He continues to attack the middle of the paint, and as soon as that help comes, he drops it off to Gordon, but a rare miss for Mr. Nugget on the finish. And as soon as he got that matchup against the Unicorn again, it was right back to that block, physically overwhelming him, turning over his right, and finding a crafty angle to finish. With Jokic though, isolations are the least of your worries. The true staple of Denver's offense is those two-man actions. Of course, you have Jamal Murray. Notice how Horford's hesitant to step in front of the ball at first, and that leaves him with an easy lane to the basket. He can also set up these plays by handing it off to MPJ. I think it's insane that Derek White actually blocked the 6'10" sniper's moving three, but Jokic chases the ball down for a second chance opportunity, and as we all know by now, Porter's the last guy in the league who would lose confidence. Another player Jokic can run the two-man game with is Reggie Jackson. Here you're gonna see Reggie turn the corner on a drive, putting pressure on the paint, while Peyton Watson also sets a cross screen for Jokic to move into open space on the wing. That leaves the big fella with some room to pull from deep. Reggie's been a pretty big scoring presence off the bench for them. This time they start with a high pick and roll, and the Celtics are in a zone, so the initial action doesn't really create any advantage to attack. That's where Jackson's ability to create a shot becomes most valuable, giving Drew a little bump before turning into a jumper. In the rare event that these actions don't lead to anything, that's when Jokic will go to work himself. The middle of the floor is completely cleared, leaving him with a ton of room to operate, and he fakes a turn right to set up his signature Sombor shuffle from about 15 feet. He was getting quite literally whatever he wanted one-on-one. Here, he patiently bullies his way to the front of the restricted area, and that's just way too easy. And as soon as Porzingis slid down to the paint to offer a little more resistance, Joker wrapped his arm around the rim protector for a ridiculous backwards pass to an open shooter who's unable to capitalize. This right here was the biggest difference maker between these offenses early on. Boston was on fire from 3, 6 of 12 in the first, and Denver was not. Even with such a disparity, the Nuggets didn't have much trouble keeping up, and through 12 minutes it was just a 1-point game. Because Jokic played the entire first, that meant he had some resting to do in the second, and the way the Nuggets do their rotation leaves Jamal Murray on the floor with a more defensively focused lineup running the show. And right away I got flashbacks to last year's playoffs because this dude was cooking. This one starts with a high ball screen, but as soon as Tatum plays the right, Jamal rejects it and explodes left, leaving him with space to pull up for a 3. Next time down, he's matched up with the smaller Peyton Pritchard, so instead of playing from the perimeter, he takes him to the post and spins into a beautiful one-legged jumper. Even when Jokic checked back in, Jamal was the focal point of their attack. Of course, you have the two-man game. Notice how Jaylen Brown jumps to the side of the initial screen, so when they instead flip it to attack left, now he's got Porzingis out in space and drives into a floater. The reason I wanted you to focus on Brown is because the next time they set it up, instead of playing aggressive, he kind of sits back and waits, which leaves Jamal with too much room from deep. In other words, this guy was going into the entire bag to put the ball in the basket. His last points came in semi-transition, where he takes on multiple defenders himself and goes to an absolutely ridiculous angle on the finish. He was their only source of offense in the second. He scored 15 points on 6 of 9 shooting, while the Nuggets as a whole recorded just 24. With that said, I've got to at least shout out this moment Peyton Watson had. On defense, he picks up a huge block from behind, then he trails the play on the other end and steps into a 3. Outside of that though, other guys were missing shots, making careless mistakes with the ball, one of which led to this big time play in transition where Tatum caught a body. Speaking of Tatum, he started this quarter on fire. On the opening play, it was a high ball screen, and the Nuggets are just a touch late getting out to switch, so he steps into a 3. Typically, when he comes off a screen like that, he's met with a more aggressive coverage. 2 jump out to him here, so he quickly shovels it into the roller, who makes a quick extra pass to the corner for a wide open 3. It's crazy how far Tatum's come as a playmaker. This one's closer to the end of the half, but again starts with him drawing 2, and instead of quickly giving it up, he keeps his dribble live as he surveys the floor for the best opportunity. That puts the defense in rotation and results in another good look from the corner. In addition to the perimeter game, they were setting him up in the mid-post quite a bit. He has no trouble getting around Watson with his first step and finishes through contact for 2 plus a foul. Although some things were clearly working, interestingly enough, the Celtics actually didn't shoot well at all in the second. After that sharp shooting first, they followed with 4 of 14 from 3 and 11 of 27 from the field. Usually with numbers like that, it's hard to generate good offensive production, but the key for them was completely dominating the possession game. Brown gets another high-quality corner 3, and when he misses, Kristaps keeps it alive by tipping it out to Tatum, who immediately kicks it to White for a second chance jumper. And on this one, it's White who misses the first 3, Tatum who flies in from the perimeter for a rebound before quickly kicking it to Brown. The defense is disoriented, so when Jaylen attacks, there's nobody to protect the rim. Even in transition, they got whatever they wanted on the glass. Porter should be the one locating Kristaps and putting a body on him, but he instead chooses to go for a block, resulting in a 3-2 points. They didn't turn the ball over a single time in this quarter and picked up 6 offensive rebounds. So despite shooting poorly, they still wound up with an incredibly efficient offense and won the quarter, putting them up 6 heading into the break. In quarter number 3, we saw a stark difference. The star of this one? Denver's defense. This play starts with a ball screen that the Nuggets switch, leaving Porzingis with a mismatch to attack in the post. Porter comes over to double, and watch how the entire defense shifts. Jokic is ready to pick up White if that's where the ball goes, and when it gets skipped to Holiday, it's KCP who closes out, with Gordon jumping out to the corner from the paint. That's a perfect rotation that mitigates any numbers advantage, and the Celtics are forced to fall back on some ISO ball. This stretch was a reminder of what the locked-in Nuggets look like. In semi-transition, Jokic finds himself cross-matched with Tatum, and Porter aggressively helps at the nail to prevent an easy blow-by, leaving KCP in between 2 shooters. Again, look at the shift. KCP rotates up, while Porter immediately closes to the corner, and once again there's no numbers advantage. It's man coverage, but it really feels like a zone with how they move. And it's on a string. Nobody misses their rotation. That's what a perfect scramble looks like. It felt like whenever the Celtics did create an advantage, it was just erased. Tatum draws 2 and hits Kristaps on a slip, creating about as good a 4-on-3 as you'll find. Now, the best option here would probably be a pass to Brown on the weak side, but the big man doesn't see that, instead kicking it strong side, where KCP can recover to run Holiday off the line. That leads to another opportunity for an advantage, with Jokic covering too, but he baits a pass and deflects it. Then from there, it's some pretty standard paint defense to not give up a bucket. It was clear that the Nuggets prioritized the paint over anything else. Jokic plays the ball screen in a deep drop coverage, and instead of peeling into a switch, KCP continues to shadow the drive. Holiday's open, but that's a tough read to make, and Tatum instead tries a tough finish. That's not to say they didn't still have great possessions. There's a reason they have the best record in basketball. A few times they were able to punish Denver's aggressive helping by moving the ball and making all the right reads. This one creates a long closeout for White to attack, getting all the way to the rim for a chance at 3 points. White was pretty much the lone bright spot for the Celtics in this quarter. He actually went on a bit of a flurry, pouring in bucket after bucket from all over the court, contributing to an impressive 16 second half points. The problem is that he was the only guy shooting the ball well. As a team, they created some quality threes out of Denver's paint-focused defense, but simply weren't knocking them down. And with the Nuggets packing the paint, those offensive rebounds weren't there, so they couldn't live off the possession game anymore. On the other end, Jokic pretty much had a repeat of his dominant start. First, you have this broken possession that ends up in his hands for a completely stupid shot. And the Celtics once again let him operate against Porzingis in single coverage, which I'm sure you already know the result of. When Horford checked in, it was his turn, and instead of setting up in the low post, Joker spent a lot of time out in space. He can't be left open because of the shooting, but he's also a threat to put it on the deck, beating Al off the dribble and drawing a foul. Here it is again. He starts a drive from up top, but this time Horford cuts him off, so he instead waltzes into a floater from the nail, which of course hits every inch of the rim before dropping. The next time Jokic started from up top, the Celtics finally committed to a double team, and he just throws a little spin move while surveying the floor, finds a wide open shooter in the corner, but you can't make them all, right? So he cooked Kristaps, cooked Horford. There were also a few times where Jokic found himself cross-matched with the much smaller Drew Holiday. And that's obviously not a matchup you can leave one-on-one, so he started to dissect the defense as a playmaker. This one was nasty, staring down the corner to send Derek White on a closeout and kicking it up top to Murray, who's left with a warm-up jumper. Here's another play where he's got the Drew matchup, and when he flashes to the post, notice how Horford comes over early so that he can double right off the catch. Naturally, Jokic responds by throwing a 360 pass to the open cutter for a dunk. Like I mentioned earlier, in addition to the one-on-one mastery, he's always a threat to set up some two-man game with virtually the entire roster. This time it's Murray, and I love the wrinkle of having Gordon also set a down screen so that there's nobody to close on Jokic's pop. Here's one that starts with Jokic handing it off to Porter, and I know I sound like a broken record, but once again Jokic's own gravity as a screener makes the big hesitant to step over at first, and leaves the door open for a huge dunk. I've got to take a moment to talk about MPJ. He wasn't shooting the ball well at all, but found a way to make a big impact by crashing the offensive glass. He grabbed 4 offensive rebounds, 3 of which came in the third, including this one on the final possession of the quarter that he quickly puts back up for a trip to the line. After he hits both free throws, we've got a 1-point game heading into the final 12 minutes. The fourth quarter was all defense from both teams. Denver made sure it was a point of emphasis to load up in Tatum's driving lanes as much as possible. This one's in semi-transition, and you can see how aggressively Reggie Jackson's playing the nail. Later in that same possession, Porzingis tries to take Jackson in the mid-post, but look at Gordon. He's not giving the big man anywhere to go, and he has to settle for a tougher shot over the top. Here's another example of them loading up on Tatum. He isolates from an open wing, but you have Watson sitting at the nail to help on a drive right, and Jackson coming way over from the weak side to help on a drive left. The idea here is to make Tatum settle, and it worked, not just this once. Over the course of this game, he attempted 8 threes, many with a high degree of difficulty and off the dribble, which is exactly what the Nuggets wanted. Because as soon as he puts his head down and attacks the rim by any means necessary, he becomes one of the hardest players in the league to cover. Whenever Tatum set up in the mid-post, they'd bring in a double team from the middle of the floor. And with the shot clock winding down, he's forced into a really tough look. I'm sure you can tell, but the offense was really stagnant. You've just gotta have more movement. When they went to a set play, Kristaps in the pinch post, while Tatum sets a flare screen for White, all of a sudden they've got a great look from outside. Once the movement's established, you can go to the ISO game whenever there's an advantage to attack. Like here, Brown's got a clear physical edge on Murray, and they clear a side of the floor for him to go to work in the post, which leads to a shot at the rim. Look at the score after that bucket, 98 points with just under 5 minutes left. They finished the game with 100, so if you're wondering how much they struggled, well, there you go. Some of these empty possessions were good looks that just simply didn't fall, but some of them were also a result of Tatum and Brown settling or the offense stagnating. Luckily, they had a defense of their own to fall back on. They went with a double big look for the entire quarter. Here they've got Cornette on Gordon sitting back to play the drive, while Porzingis, who's matched with Watson, is free to roam as a rim protector. The idea here was to take away the paint and make the Nuggets roll guys knock down shots. And clearly it worked. Well, on everyone except for Jamal Murray. It's like we're in a time loop. Jokic takes over one quarter, and when he sits, here comes Jamal. It pretty much all came down to the high pick and roll game. He turns the corner and finds some space to drive, where he puts in an absolutely ridiculous finish through contact. Then he topped that one on the very next play. Boston does a great job of shutting off the paint, but he just keeps his dribble live and continues to hunt for a lane, eventually spinning into a layup at an unfathomable angle. Clearly, they've got to keep him as far away from the basket as possible. And when they commit to the deep drop coverage, he's stepping back into a smothered mid-range jumper. Finally, they decide to get the ball out of his hands, trapping him all the way out at half court, but all that does is create a 4-on-3, and the result is a wide open jumper for KCP. Just like I talked about earlier, whenever he had the smaller Pritchard on him, instead of the high ball screens, he'd set up in the post. And the level of shot making that was on display can't possibly be overstated. Because of Jamal's play at the beginning of quarters 2 and 4, the Nuggets were actually able to win the non-Jokic minutes. Pretty rare, and when it happens, they really don't lose. As soon as Jokic checked back into the game, they went right back to that signature two-man game, and the Celtics play it in drop, so Jamal threatens a drive before spinning back out towards the perimeter, creating a ton of separation for another tough shot. So next time they again try a blitz, letting Jokic catch the ball in the middle, and this is where that size comes into play because Porzingis can cover both the lob and the floater. Of course, Joker really isn't fazed by the double big look though. This time he's backing down Horford, and with Kristaps coming over to shut off the rim, he spins into a fall-away jumper off the glass. And here it is one more time, faking the handoff to Murray before isolating, and there's just nothing Horford can do. That one made the score 99-98, and I don't know if those numbers triggered something, but from there, this game turned into complete chaos. You've got Jokic at the end of the shot clock attempting a one-legged three-pointer while MPJ flies in for his fourth offensive rebound and puts it back up to extend the lead. Then you have Tatum isolating Gordon, but this time the Nuggets don't load up, so he's exploding into a drive and dunk. The Celtics completely lock up, which means Jokic again has to hoist a last-second awkward three, and Porzingis perfectly times it for a huge block. The Celtics come down and White gets a decent look from the corner that misses, only for Kristaps to do his best impression of Randy Moss, but he gets called for an offensive foul. After that, the Nuggets get a wide open three of their own, except Gordon isn't much of a shooter, airballing directly into the hands of Tatum, who immediately takes off so that he can try to take the Nuggets 3-on-1. He somehow fumbles his way to the rim and secures it just in time to lay it up, but misses by a hair, and Gordon gets fouled off the rebound. After making the first free throw, Jokic does something I'm not sure I've ever seen before, pretending to step into the lane to bait the Celtics into a violation. Now, I'll be the first to admit I have no idea what the rules on this are, and I don't know if the refs did either because they don't know what to do and just end up calling a jump ball. What in the world is going on? Boston wins the jump, leaving them with 13 seconds to try and tie the game. Their first attempt gets completely shut down. The Nuggets play near perfect defense. Jokic is out there moving and switching like Anthony Davis, but in all seriousness, Boston calls a timeout to attempt something else. What they come up with is an isolation for Tatum. He goes to a fall-away jumper that doesn't come anywhere near dropping, and the Nuggets squeak out a win. As a team, Denver only shot 26% from three, but they were able to rely on their superstar duo to get the job done, combining for 69 points on 67% shooting. On the other side, Brown and Tatum shot a combined 2 of 17 from 3, only took 5 free throws, really playing into the hands of Denver's defense as the team died from behind the arc. With that, they were still able to keep the final score within 2, showcasing just how elite they actually are. All that's to say, when the number 1 team meets the defending champions, us fans are in for a treat. And it leaves me wondering, did we just see a preview of the NBA Finals? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content. If you're interested in my more in-depth research, make sure to check out my website and social media profiles. You can find those links in the description. Feel free to let me know down in the comments what you thought of this game. As always, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.